I realized how distracted I was and how hard it was to try to manage the 4,000 different things that you have to do to run a business. I'm just learning by doing, I'm failing, I'm trying. It's everything under the sun. And anyone that's run a small business or tried to do their own thing knows that it's not simply just like show up, do 1, 2, and 3, leave.
It's time to get inside your own head. Begin with the psychology behind your behaviors. Infuse it with an acute understanding of self-awareness, emotion, storytelling, body language, and more. Then look at it all through the lens of the latest neuroscience research, broken down to its most digestible form. And you've arrived. Enhanced messaging, deeper connection, heightened influence, and a greater impact on the world. Welcome to the Amplify Podcast with Renee Rodriguez.
Welcome to this episode of the Amplify Podcast. And today I have a guest that this is actually my first time meeting Jeff. And Jeff is the owner, CEO of a company by the name of Ugmonk. And it's a product that I use and that I am so extremely excited about, not because it's a product. So this isn't a product pitch. This is a lifestyle sort of awareness and a productivity tool that has already made a massive impact. And I mean, I'm actually sitting and staring at it on my desk. And if you're watching the video, you can see what this little simple contraption device is and how it has helped me, somebody who suffered from ADD in his entire life, who's already, I would say myself, a very high functioning, productive person. But the reality is that my brain works differently. And I think a lot of you listening here probably run into the same thing, especially even if you don't have ADD. We're in a highly distracted world today where everything is coming at us, from cell phones to text messages, emails, requests. We have opened up portals to our attention, and in the mix of going through that, and now add to that, we're in a hustle culture where everyone wants to get everything done, and side hustles and tasks are going up. And how do you know what's most important? And that's the big question, is what do you do next? What do you keep in front of you? And when I ran across this, and we'll go into it in detail, it was so simple. It was so easy to use, because if it's complex, I won't do it. There is no excuses on this system, and it keeps in front of me the things that are most important. And it forces me to think in a simplistic manner, which I have come to find has driven execution in getting more and more done. So all that being said, I am so excited to welcome you, Jeff, to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat.
Absolutely. So Jeff, you started this company, Ugmonk, where, and I'm going to do my best to describe it. I have this little wooden, very elegant container here. And in that is some cue cards or like, just, what do you call this? What do you call these cards?
Yeah, just index cards, 3x5 cards.
Index cards. There you go. And on one side, it has today, and there's a list of things that I can do, and it leans perfectly there. On the back is some room for notes, and that's all that there is. Now, there's some backup cards, which I'll get into afterwards, but this is the main piece where, for me, when something important comes, I know I got to get done. Usually I'm doing this the night before, or even, quite frankly, I tell my wife, because she gives me the list of things to do, I said, don't tell me, tell the card. And it goes on this card. And in the middle of my day, I'm squirming around, not knowing what to do. Maybe my ADD is high, my stress is high, my cognitive fatigue is kicked in. And I just glance over and I go, and it's like true north instantly. Tell us the story about you, how you got started, and the genesis of this amazing system.
Yeah, so it's a really a winding path that led me to creating the product that is now called Analog, and that analog system that you're using on your desk. But I didn't start out thinking like, I want to design an index card system that's going to sit on my desk. It had nothing to do with that. In fact, I grew up doing art and design my whole life, and I still call myself a designer by trade and an entrepreneur by accident. Kind of fell backwards into the business side of things, but I just wanted to make things, and I really wanted to make things that I personally liked. And that started 15 years ago, making t-shirts, making graphic tees. I was designing shirts, started my own little side project, eventually turned into more than just a side project. And I went full time and slowly built an audience all over the globe of people that was buying these shirts. During this time, I realized how distracted I was and how hard it was to try to manage the 4,000 different things that you have to do to run a business. I'm just learning by doing, I'm failing, I'm trying. it's everything under the sun. And anyone that's run a small business or tried to do their own thing knows that it's not simply just like show up, do 1, 2, and 3, leave. And so in that process, I started using index cards on my desk. I tried journals, I tried productivity tools, I tried digital things. And over the course of that 15 years, it kind of ebbed and flowed. But the one thing that stayed constant was like I kept using index cards. I needed something to center me on and just what I needed to get done. I liked the small form factor, and I liked that it constrained what I could do rather than like this endless scrolling digital list that it kind of feels like, overwhelming because you can never catch up to that digital list. Like it's just things keep coming on. So I was using just regular index cards, building this business. I built this design studio called Ugmonk, mostly around apparel in the beginning, and slowly shifted into more desk and productivity tools, which is now our main focus. But yeah, this product called Analog came about because I needed something because I was distracted and I kept checking, Facebook, Instagram, ESPN, whatever, go through that cycle. And all of the digital tools that I was using weren't working. I decided to create this I started the design process probably back in 2019, ended up launching it in 2020. Actually, the pandemic completely changed our whole launch plan. Had to scrap our video shoot and had to figure out, I actually shot and edited the video here in my home office by myself because we were all locked down. Launched that on Kickstarter, and that we were going to raise, or I think our goal was 18 or 20,000. We ended up raising $435,000 during the pandemic, kind of propelled us to the next level, and is honestly still our biggest seller to this day. But that's like the quick origin story of how this seemingly simple tool came to be.
What I love is that you said you're a designer first and entrepreneur by accident, which you can tell that design is at the core of this. And what's interesting too is a lot of people confuse design with user design, user interface design. And there's things that are aesthetically beautiful, but functionally horrible. And this is aesthetically simple and beautiful and perfectly functional. So talk to me about that idea of why, I understand the science benefit, why the need for simplicity, and why is simplicity so important for us right now in such a chaotic world?
Yeah, I think it's becoming ever more increasing important in our lives because we're surrounded by so many things. We have access to literally everything at our fingertips with our iPhone in our pocket that we can pull out, and we can do everything. In fact, we can run an entire business from that computer. But that actually leads to more and more distraction and kind of this paralysis around what should I do next? Should I check something? Should I post something? Should I send an email? And simplicity, and at the core of what I do with Ugmonk is trying to find how much can I strip away to finally get to the essence of the object. And a lot of these principles go in line with a designer that I deeply respect named Dieter Rams. And Dieter Rams has these 10 principles of design. And he created these principles probably 50 or 60 years ago. But if you read through them, every single one still rings true. And in fact, he was behind a lot of the brawn objects, watches, clocks, razors, appliances that still look amazing to this day. And there's something about simplicity that will stand the test of time as opposed to adding things and creating things that have, why doesn't this have Bluetooth functionality? Why can't I scan my cards? Why can't I connect it to an app? It's like, I'm trying to do the opposite because simplicity is ultimately what wins and is actually what makes what you put into action. And fiddling around with a digital productivity tool, it feels like work, but you're actually not doing anything. Whereas analog is all about just straight getting stuff done.
I love that simplicity. My mentor growing up said simplicity drives execution. But I love how you said simplicity sort of stands the test of time and it always wins. But I also think that so few of us, me included, don't really understand simplicity. Because we think simplicity is almost paradoxical. It's almost counterintuitive, I guess. If it had Bluetooth, it'd make it simpler for me. Well, if I had these other functions, make it simpler. If I had all these things, it would make my life easier. When you're saying simple, there's another route to simple. And so can I just dig in on what you mean by that? Because designers are truly good. They truly understand simple.
Mm-hmm.
But for the layperson like us, we're just like, we think more it would be simple. Explain that whole thing to us, please.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact quote, but there's a famous artist and designer, I think he was a sculptor, that talked about design is not finished when there's nothing left to add, but it's when there's nothing left to take away. that idea of distilling something down to its essence, it's actually much harder to write one paragraph than it is to write an entire page. It's actually much harder to write one sentence than it is to write one paragraph. And it's even harder as you get, smaller and smaller. And I think the idea that simplicity equals easy is completely backwards, because when you see something and you might see this analog product and now you see it on your desk and you're like, duh, why didn't anyone else make this? Like, I could make this. But I think that is actually the core of what simplicity is it's so simple and it's so almost provocative in a way that it's just so obvious that it leads you to say, man, this thing just works. And some of the best things in life are simple. The more we get technology embedded into everything, the more complex things get. Our cars are just basically computers, and there's more and more things breaking, more and more complexity. But if you look at simple machines and simple things that have been designed hundreds of years ago that are still used in pulley systems and ratchets and things like that, there is a power to that. And also the mental load that doesn't come with that, right? Like the mental load to use something simple, to pick up a screwdriver and screw a screw in, there's no mental load. You know how to use it. It works. It's simple. But when you think about a complex piece of machinery that takes years to learn how to use, the mental load to even start using that tool kind of pushes you away from it. So I think as humans, we are drawn to simplicity. We like simple things. I don't think simple equals easy, but I do think simplicity can be powerful.
Sort of my brain is going in different directions. It's like but complex can make things easy. Like a complex system can make lifting a boulder easier, but it's not simple in how it came together. So it's a really cool sort of difference between simple and easy. And I think too many of us, me, like I said, included, we merge those two words together. And so for you, do you have a background, or what became your driving force behind wanting to find simplicity in design? I mean, let's go back. Like, where did this begin for you? Like, why did you choose that? Why is simplicity so important to you?
Yeah, I think I've always been drawn to it from an aesthetic standpoint. And there's designs and designers that have designed things literally 50, 60, 80 years ago. You look at something like the NBC logo that was designed way, way back when. We have that peacock shape, or you think about the IBM logo, or you think about the Coca-Cola logo. There's simplicity in all of those things that stood the test of time. And as I was learning more of the design side and what it means to communicate through design, shifting from art and into graphic design, I was just immediately drawn to those things because of the way that they are timeless, and because of the way that somehow somebody created something that doesn't look old. It actually looks like the IBM logo still looks great to this day. And I was really, really drawn towards that and trying to emulate that with my designs, not necessarily on that same level, but trying to achieve that simplicity. So people like Dieter Rams, designers like Paul Rand, Saul Bass, all of these classic designers, the CBS logo, like there's so many things that we interact with that were actually designed before there was technology, before there was computers, and we still look at them and they're the most recognizable brands. So I was drawn to that in the beginning. And then I think my goal has really been to do with Analog and with the Ugmonk brand is take things that are complex, distill them down into a simple form that really combines form and function. And what happens a lot of times is you end up with like a beautiful object where people focus on form and sculpture and art, but it's not functional. Like it's not the coffee mug you go to grab every day because you're like, well, this one looks great on the shelf, but I don't want to use it. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is people that have focused purely on simplicity and function, but it's the ugliest thing around. And you're like, I got to stick that away. You know, if friends are coming over, I got to shove all this stuff under in a drawer because it's ugly. So my goal has been, how do I marry those two things? And Analog is a great example with the cards, with the card holder, the way the wood is designed, the way the back has like a slight lip on it so that when you slide the cards in the back, it's just delightful to use instead of like you're jamming it in. So all of these little details is kind of my goal with simplicity and bringing it all together, but pulling from other references and reading books like David Allen's Getting Things Done. There's so many other books, Deep Work by Cal Newport, like all these other books that I'm like, man, this is great. But most people aren't going to sit there and read all of these books. How can I make this system so dead simple and so enjoyable to use and combine all those things, mash them all together? And I worked on Analog for over 2 years before I launched it, just to launch the simple index card system. So that's kind of like the goal and the ethos behind what I'm doing.
I love they said ethos too. So when you looked at, I mean, I love that too, that you're talking about Getting Things Done, David Allen, and which is a great system. It is just not simple.
No.
It is not simple. I was trained by one of his understudies for a day and a half. It changed my way of thinking, but to implement again, like what I used to use a PC, a laptop, and it was easier to drag and drop things into a task, and it would create it automatically. Then I moved to Mac, and it didn't have the same functionality. And then getting the categories right, it's like,
Yep.
nope, this is just here's my few things I got to focus on. And for an executive, somebody who's dealing in higher level decisions, it is about less decisions that have bigger impact. And that's the piece that I'm really looking to say, which if it goes there, what will move the needle? And what was fascinating is that if it's not going to move the needle today, you still give me a place to put it with the other card, the little darker card. What do they call that? The someday card, which is, I see your little nod to David Allen there. And it gives you still a repository for capturing the thinking and capturing those different pieces. I'm loving the behavior side of all of this. I want to move in the direction of like you there's more ways around this. It's not so you have a daily sort of philosophy around and okay, so there's the product, but then there's a philosophy and the process underneath it. So let's, if we can we break down your daily philosophy and habits? And then I want to go into, you also have a weekly view too, which I didn't know. And I'm going to go buy that. I told my buddy that Dave Savage about this. He's like, oh my God, I totally use this too. And he goes, I got the week one, and he sends me pictures of it. And he just exited a big company. He's starting another startup. And I mean, they're killing it. And that's his productivity. So tell us the philosophy underlying the daily view of why just a few items, and what's the whole process thinking, and what's the habits behind how to be most successful with this?
Yeah, I mean that's the power. So below the surface, sure, we're using like the best card stock. I'm using a solid block of walnut. We're milling this thing to look beautiful, and it is enjoyable to use. Like the materials are made in the US. We're actually making it here in Pennsylvania. We work with local craftsmen. That's the beauty of the product, like just at face value. You want to leave it out, you want to use it. That is a key part of the habit. Anything that gets in a drawer, you don't want to use. But beyond that, it is really a prioritization habit and ritual that says, hey, this card only has 10 lines. I can only put, on this card, I can only put 10 things on here. Which of the 10 am I going to do? Or maybe it's which of the 3 am I going to do? And that is like the whole switch right there. Because if I open up a Google Doc and it's got 47 different to-dos, which I have probably 470 right now, sitting somewhere, all I'm going to do is pick off the easy ones and be like, I'll do this, do this, do this. And you know what ends up staying there? All the ones you don't want to do, and all the ones that are friction, that feels hard, that feels like, writing that one sentence tagline that I cannot figure out. So what Analog does is says, hey, you have a lot to do today. What are the most important things to do? And by physically writing them on that card will stare at me all day long and say, hey, do this, do this, do this. I know you want to be working on the next design, but do this, do this, do this. And that prioritization principle is really what helps me and my distracted brain. I haven't been diagnosed with ADD, but I resonate with so much of it that I feel like I probably have some form of it, because of the more I read about it, the more I study it, the more I feel like those are the exact ways that my neurons connect or disconnect. So this tool, it's not necessarily because it's complex and it's because it has all this, this amazing technology behind it. It's that it's so simple that I'm going to use it. And everything else, even like journals and things that have great, like, what are your highlights for the day? What is your plan for the week? What are this? I've tried those and I'm just too distracted to stick with them. I get 2 pages in. I'm like, so the fact that I use Analog every day and it stares at me, it's basically a priority tool. Like it's what do I want to do today that's going to move the needle, just like you said. So that's where the power comes in. And that's why we get story after story from people like you and business executives and coaches and teachers and stay-at-home moms and all of these different people that are like, this is the first thing that's ever worked. Like this is the first thing that people have stuck with for more than a week. And people are now using it for going on 4 years since I launched it. I believe that it's a lot of those things combined. So it's the principles of simplicity and beauty and easy to use. It feels good. Mash those all together. And that's kind of the magic that Analog has created.
I love that. And so can you give us a couple of best practices in terms of using it, like things like for me, I like to try to fill it out the night before. And so I can go, because your best day starts the night before is what I always say, right? And if I can do that, say, what are the biggest things I can move and how do I close out this list? But what other best practices do you think?
Yeah, that's one of the best ways to start with it, is thinking the night before, because typically what most people, if we're honest, we're going to open up our email, we're going to open up our social media. We're going to check that. And then all we're doing is putting out fires every day. We're like, oh crap, this thing just came in. I've got to tackle this. I got to tackle this. Then you look and it's lunchtime and you're like, what did I even do today? And those things will still exist. Those fires still exist. But if you start your day in your inbox, it's always going to feel less productive than proactively thinking through those things. So I think the night before is a great habit to get into, or the day before, even leaving work. If you're leaving a physical office, write down a couple things that you know are the important things to do the next day. Another principle is the carryover principle. And that means if I did not do it today, I have to physically write it on the next card for the upcoming day. And I have done this literally for weeks sometimes, where this stupid task sticks with me and I keep rewriting it, and I have to kind of address that every day. And just that little bit of friction is the thing that says, okay, do I either A, not need to do this thing at all, B, why am I putting it off, or C, can I just get it done? And eventually, being a professional procrastinator like I am, I'll eventually push through and do it because I had to keep writing it, not because it was hidden away in a folder in a to-do app. Like, I can ignore that stuff all day long because it's not looking at me. But if I have to keep writing it on my card, it almost annoys myself, but that is what propels me forward. That's what puts me in motion and gives me the momentum. And man, does it feel so good to finally cross off, like, call that person, call that supplier, whatever it was. So the carryover principle, again, it's a similar thing from David Allen's Getting Things Done, but keeping those things on the card and moving them physically is different than just letting it sit in some notes app on your phone that you never have to deal with.
I can't express the importance of keeping things top of mind in front of you. That out of sight, out of mind is a real thing. And if I am not physically looking at it, I mean, I literally go from here to there and I'm just looking at it. And it's even on this podcast, I'm going, oh shoot, I got to go do this thing. And I'm looking at it. When you said, what are the things I put off? I looked over, I'm like, there's a third time I've had that one on the card. I love that. So talk to me about the weekly strategy and how do we look at our week? Because it's a great way to look at the day. How should we be looking at our week?
Yeah, I mean, I think I always designed analog to be part of a larger system. So if you're just simply checking off tasks every day, you can end up, if you're 1 degree off, you're going to end up pretty far off target if you're just doing a bunch of busy work. Now, sometimes the dopamine in our brain, it feels good to just cross things off. But if it's not actually the important stuff and you're just putting stuff on there to cross it off, you don't end up reaching your goals. You kind of just end up on this treadmill or this hamster wheel where you're not moving forward. The larger system, and what I'm still developing and still bringing out, is how do we zoom out of that? So the weekly view, this is the weekly cards right here if you're watching the video. The weekly cards are going to have, I think of it as like one level zoomed out. So this is not the 10,000 foot view, but this is probably the 100-foot view. So I want to see, how are my daily tasks going to work together? Where am I going to feel the most stressed? Where am I going to feel the most busy? What do I have going on that's coming up? And I don't want to have to open up my digital calendar on my computer or my phone, because instantly, as soon as I open that up, I see all the other appointments that start to, bring anxiety, and you worry about, what am I going to do in 4 months from now? Or it's going to lead to like, oh, a notification popped up and I got to text my friend and I never texted him back. And then 30 minutes later, I'm like, what was I even looking at? I was just trying to find out when I was supposed to record this podcast. So the weekly view is literally kind of a zoomed out view of the daily. And there can be things that are both on the daily card and the weekly, but it's like those important things. I got to take my kid to soccer practice. I have to record a podcast. I'm going to do a product launch. And being able to see it in a week's chunk of time is actually really helpful. And it's been really helpful for me to not feel overwhelmed when I see all those dots on the calendar, which is just like, man, how am I going to get this all done? And it gives you like a flow, or like, oh, Thursday looks really open. That's the day I'm going to take a little extra time. I'm going to read. I'm going to take a longer lunch. And without having to go into a calendar, because I think that calendars do not visualize that stuff very well. But these cards were just like a zoomed out view of the daily.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. We get stuck if you get so close to your day and you don't take a look at where that day fits into a grander plan, you're right. It is only a partial solution. So like my days here, my year is over on this wall over there. It's a 6-foot wall calendar where I look at every month, and we put all of our major events there color coded, with what revenues attached to them, and et cetera. But that weekly view is what I've always found to be such a really good happy medium between year, month, day, but that week I can look at that, work from the day, but plan from that week in context of the bigger year. And so how do you suggest that we look at weeks? Like I'll give you an example. For me, it's what meetings do I need? Where am I spending my time? Right. So who am I meeting with? I'm always looking at who's there, and I'm looking at what activities would be green for me, which would be revenue generating in our business, and then which ones are content delivery, where I've been paid to do this, but I have to go deliver it. Right. I have to go earn the money of that. What do you suggest from a high level is the right philosophy to look at the week?
Yeah, I think that really depends on the type of work you do or the type of life that you live or you want to live and what you're trying to optimize for, right? Because if you're optimizing for revenue, those things are going to be the important things. You're going to kind of see that wave, you're going to see that flow. If you're optimizing for time off or, surfing at the beach and you want to see how many days you're going to get to hang out, then you're optimizing for that. But I think the week view is, it's essentially just a template, but it's going to be used in different ways for different people. And I'm thinking about how my wife uses the cards versus me. She doesn't have a desk job. She's home with our kids. She's running them all over to school and practice and all these things. But what we've been doing is putting like those important dates on there and then like meal planning. So instead of like, oh, what are we supposed to eat for dinner tonight? Just sitting down for like 10 minutes, figuring out the plan for the week, and you've got the meals all lined up. So maybe removes that decision making and that stress from each day to simply have that in 1 week time. We don't have to worry about next week, next month, just the next 7 days. And I think people can optimize for whatever they want their week to be about, whether it's meetings, whether it's writing, whether it's creating, whether it's travel. But having a visual of that, like you said before, you do what's in front of you. If you take mail out of your mailbox, physical mailbox, and you put it on the kitchen counter, you eventually have to deal with that. Most of it's going in the trash, it's going in the recycle bin. We don't have to do too much with it anymore from a mail standpoint, but the principle still remains the same. If that mail goes in a junk drawer, as soon as you take it out of the mailbox and you stuff it in a drawer and close it, you will never deal with it. So just this idea of you do what's in front of you, and what's in front of you matters. It's just like it's an age old principle, and I think that's our human brains are wired for that. So whether it's the weekly or the daily, that's why these products work, and they're designed to be propped up like perfectly in front of you so that it is staring at you. It's not a journal that you close. It's not a big giant thing that you have to pull out. Working on a travel version right now for people that are more mobile. So it's going to be a cool little case that opens and they can close. So you can be on a job site, you can be anywhere, but the principle just remains the same as, if you see it, that you're going to have to deal with it.
When is the travel solution going to be out?
Hopefully later this year. It's still, we're prototyping right now. I've got some really cool ideas for a way to make it more mobile and a little bit slimmer and easier to throw in your bag when you're on the road.
That would be phenomenal because, I think we all need that for sure.
Yeah. Right now we have a case that brings the cards along with you, but this new travel case is essentially going to be an updated version of that wood and metal magnetic case, and it will allow you to still prop up the card in front of you. So if you're in a hotel room, you can still take that out, take your card, and have it stare at you.
I love that. I'm hoping my listeners hear this, that, there's ways to look at productivity and understanding the importance of having the zoomed out view over the year, looking at the month, looking at the week and looking at the day. But what I just got out of this, I wrote this down. It says, you will do what is in front of you. So that's just science and biology and everything. So make sure that what's in front of you actually matters. And as you did that, I looked around my desk and I go, okay, so, and I'm thinking out loud here. I will do, not, we do, I will do what's in front of me. And how many things in front of me is my brain processing that it doesn't need to? I'm processing, some Advil pain medication that I have here because I just haven't moved it yet. I've got some toothpicks that are cinnamon toothpicks with tea tree therapy on them. I don't need to see those things. Am I processing that stuff? I've got a duster here, one of these things that dusts, just in case. Well, my brain is doing all that. Well, what if I removed it and only kept those 6? It's really sort of the aha that I'm having, and it's not even. It's so simple, it's profound, but it's also something I've heard. But if I can surrender to the fact that I will do what's in front of me, even if it's stupid things, I'll do those stupid things. And by doing, I mean my brain is processing something, whether it might be guilt or maybe I'll take care of it, or it's just an added level of cortisol, whatever it is. So then the solution is only put in front of you what matters. And that's what these cards do.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just about aesthetics. I think this is where they will see my desk and they'll say, wow, how do you keep it so clean? I'll say, I don't keep my desk clean. In fact, I designed an entire system called the Gather Collection that's designed to be structure for my desk, but it is not designed to keep it looking perfectly clean. It is designed to have a place for everything that is on my desk, so it's out of sight, out of mind. And people, say, I could never work with such an empty desk with just a keyboard and a mouse. It's like, that's not the point, because when we're doing work, we've got papers, we've got books, we've got, devices. That's real work. Like, real work is messy. And I think the idea that the stuff is on the desk is what I have to deal with. But then at the end of the day, if I leave it a mess, when I come back the next morning, that's the problem, because then my brain is trying to process, what do I do with yesterday's mess? So it's beyond just aesthetically like, oh, you're a neat freak. Like, I'm not a neat freak. In fact, I've got junk drawers over here full of crap. But what goes on my desk is the stuff that I'm going to deal with that day, because it's in my line of sight. So I think sometimes people say, oh, your desk is just beautiful for Instagram. It's like, no, it's not. That's not how my desk lives during the day, but that's how I try to leave it. So when I come back the next morning, my analog card is there, my desk is clean, my pen is, everything is in its place, and I'm getting right to work, instead of saying I should have thrown out that chip bag from, yesterday afternoon.
Oh, I love it. I'm going to be cleaning up my desk as soon as we stop this podcast. And it's not even that messy. It's just but it's like, it's just kind of clicked for me. I will do what's in front of me. Well, there's a lot of stupid shit in front of me right now. And so I'm just going to get rid of those things and put them in a place that I can access them when I need them. I love it. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for making the time to do this. I know you guys are growing fast. It's you said over 35,000 users already using your product, and that's only going to grow. I'm seeing your growth really akin to even just watching Remarkable and what they've done there. Just another simple tool that is elegant, beautifully designed. But we use it all the time. Any last minute things you want to say? One, how can they get a hold of you? Of course, I'm going to have all the show notes are going to have your links and Instagrams and for those that want to get it, highly recommend it. All of those things. Anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I think go into our site, ugmonk.com. It's ugmonk.com. You'll get a taste of kind of my design ethos and philosophy through our products. And then the best thing to do is get on my email list, which is just ugmonk.com/newsletter. You will get all the sneak peeks for that new travel case that I'm talking about, and a number of other things. I've got this archive box solution for all the past cards and all these things that I'm working on. So if you like to get the behind the scenes access and you like those sneak peeks, jump on the newsletter. And then, I'm Ugmonk on social media. So feel free to hit me up. Happy to chat more about analog productivity.
Love it. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm hoping you got a ton out of this, whether or not you buy the product. I don't have any vested interest in the company. I'm not part of this. This is me just sharing with you things that I'm already passionate about and driving the lessons beyond it. The tool is a reflection of a process. There's no system that will solve a process problem, which is, this is a great system, but if your process, you don't have the discipline to write those things down, it's not going to work for you. You have to have the disciplines and the processes to sit and look at it and do that. But this makes the process really simple, which is why I think execution is going to be driven here. So again, if you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, share it. We want this to get into as many hands as possible. Make sure you follow Jeff and everything they're doing. Sign up for the newsletter and all the things. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for sharing this time with us. If the experience resonated with you, follow us on Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or amplifymylife.com. Share it with anyone else who's ready to amplify their lives. And remember to let our hearts speak in sequence. For more from Renee Rodriguez, visit meetrenee.com.